Welcome back to another episode on Journey to Authenticity, a podcast helping you to become fully authentic on your journey to success. I'm your host, Braiden Belnap, and I'm a human just like you, striving to build a dream life, all while I stay true to myself. But what if you're in a position of questioning what success really means to you? Maybe, in fact, you have the cars, the Lamborghini, the Rolls Royce, the big house, but you're depressed. It's silent in your house. You don't know exactly what you're doing with life because you got everything that you were reaching for, but realize it's not really what you truly desired. That's exactly why we have Brett Chell joining us today, because he went through that. He made tons of money, got the house, got the cars, and his house was silent. No kids, no wife, just him and his thoughts. And his world came crashing down in a moment's time. And he had to learn. He had to look within and really redefine what success meant to him. And now he's living each day, enjoying what he does for a living. And best part is if he doesn't enjoy doing something in his day, he just doesn't do it. With that in mind, welcome to the show, Brett.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So just to jump right into things, what initially inspired entrepreneurship for you?
Real answer?
Real answer?
This is legit. This isn't for funny. It is funny, but I'm not trying to be funny. I am 100% completely unemployable. The worst. Can't get a job. No way. Couldn't keep it. Won't do it. Hate authority. Don't want to listen to people. Just do what I do. The worst ADD. Give me a task. I'm off it in 10 minutes. But any boss would be like, no. Even now, you want to give me a job at like a regular company or some insurance place or something, I'd get fired in the first day. So entrepreneur it is.
How did you figure that one out?
Getting fired a lot.
Okay. So how fired a lot? I mean, it's a fair inspiration. Like, I got to figure something out.
Yeah. I mean, literally, like the only jobs I ever kept, luckily I'm fairly like personable. And so I could keep jobs based off people just really liked me. And they thought it was funny, and they're just like, I guess, like, hey, I'm hanging out with this guy, basically. But this is when I was really young, like 16, 17, 18. Fired, gas station, oil lube place, like fired. Like, you can't even do that. And eventually, Deb was her name at Minute Lube, kept me on because she just absolutely loved me. But useless. Like, I would forget what I'm doing in the middle of changing a car to just be sitting there for 20 minutes and I'm all fucking around doing something, and Deb's like, hey, and I'm like, oh, my bad. Let me get back there. And she's like, God, I should fire you. I'm like, yeah, well, but don't. Yeah, that was it.
I need a job.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So when was the tipping point? What age were you when you're like, all right, entrepreneurship it is?
So the only place I could go after that, my brother-in-law, my sister started dating a guy who worked on the drilling rigs in Canada. And that's like a notoriously crazy, hard, like manual labor. People get fired all the time because they're meth addicts and they're drunk, or they crash the truck and roll it 10 times on the way to work, 4 times in a row every week. Like, just these are okay, maybe I can actually keep a job out here because everyone else is getting fired. And so I went out there with him, and plus you make good money. Like, I'm 43, so this was like 20 years ago. But 150 grand a year was a lot back then. And especially for people with, no education. So that was a great environment for me. I was like, plus I had something to prove. I was like, I could do this. And everyone's like, you're not going to be able to do that. And so all those things stacked up. That was like 6-7 years, supposed to be 1 year. Traveled all over the place, worked in literally the worst spots around the US and Canada, and a little bit in Mexico. And then eventually, after like 7 years, I just realized, I'm like, holy shit, like, I'm still standing on these drilling rigs in these oily coveralls, which I love those guys. Like, actually it gave me a lot of respect and I think it instilled a lot of really important stuff in me about work ethic, because eventually by the end of it, I was proud to work hard. I was proud to so probably the school that I needed. But at the end of 7 years, I was like, one morning, I'm just like, I quit. I have to go do something. Now's the time. Like, I was high 20s, and I just quit, and that was it. And I went home, sat around for a month, and I'm like, I better start a company, I guess, or do something. And that was the start of it.
What was the first company you started?
Well, so when I quit the rigs, I had an idea of some problems I could solve out there, and it was all my experience. It's the only thing I knew. So I was like talking to some mentors that they were entrepreneurs and they were in finance and stuff like that. They had been VCs and raised money, and I just looked up to them. I was like, oh, the VC guys, they're so cool. They're always doing a million deals. Like, that's the guys. So I talked to those guys, and I'm like, here's my idea, and this is what I want to do. And they're like, you have no experience in business at all. I'm like, no. Like, okay, well, great idea, but that's like a $10-20 million problem. So great, we love that you think big, but if you don't go learn private equity or VC or something or finance, like get a street degree in that and get some time in there, you're not going to be able to do that business just because functionally you won't have enough money to do it. But also, even if you did grind it out and figure that out, you're going to get it taken from you, because at some point you're going to have to take money and you won't understand the mechanisms and you'll lose the company. And so they're 2 in a row was like, they were dead serious. They're like, you need to go work at an accelerator and learn how to do financial narratives, what different methods are for financing, like how to craft these, when and how VC money, PE money comes in, the ABC, D, and E rounds, and like when they exit, and all this language and shit I didn't understand. And so I went and worked in an accelerator in California, and that was the first one for like 5 years.
It's crazy we're talking 43, which is, as far as I'm concerned, is still really young. I know I'm saying that as a young guy, 25, but 43 is still really young.
I think I keep hearing this now, which I'm like, yeah, it's like, that's the average age of a successful founder. Like the ones who actually end up making something is like 43. It's like right on that number. And I was like, I'm fucking old. I'm like 3-4 companies in now.
Yeah. The reality is, though, you started late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
You're 19 or 13 years in.
Yeah.
Like, if you really think of that, that's a long time, but it's a short time.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes, because you know how long it takes to build stuff, to get stuff at that. I think just I'm fortunate. I have a lot of gratitude to have been lucky enough to get to the scale I did with a lot of stuff, because I just think that that's unlikely anyway. And so, matter of time, I look back on it now and I'm like, damn, I was actually taking a lot for granted while I was in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, like we talked off the podcast, is everything you do is going to take double the time, double the money.
Golden rule: double the time, double the money.
How long do you think it's going to take? Okay, now double it. Or don't, because then you're just going to work harder and you're going to make it happen quicker.
Yeah. And I was in software, so software is probably like, if you're talking about your money, quadruple it. I don't know why. It's just crazy.
It's fair. There's a lot of finite details that you need to get right when it comes to software.
Yeah, and you're just dumping stuff in, like you're just pouring money into a computer to try to get something out, and you don't know what that. Don't start a software company, actually. Don't worry about quadruple. Just don't do it.
Just don't do it. Yeah, stay away.
Someone else do it.
Start something that you're actually, marry something you're good at with what you're really good at to make a lot of money, which is what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah, you bet.
So obviously you go and work for a company. I'm sure this hasn't been you've had a lot of success. What have you taken from the oil rigs that you learned from that field? Because you were there for a long time. And what have you implemented into your entrepreneurship journey today with that?
Something you said, you had a lot of success. Define success for me so that I'm in the context of your conversation here.
So a lot of success, that's a fair question.
Mm-hmm.
Success to me, we're on journey to authenticity. One is being able to stand high, head held high, knowing that I truly am my authentic self.
Okay.
Because truthfully, you're never going to get where you truly want to be or need to be if you're not your true self.
Yeah.
It starts with you.
Yeah.
Second, solid relationships across the board. That doesn't mean just marriage, just having solid relationships. And I would say, typical, right? Do you have the money that you desire? To me, for that, are you making... I personally don't consider it a success until you're at least making $300,000 plus a year.
Yeah. See, that's the interesting one for me. I like the other two that were come up first, the authenticity and the relationships. Those are, to me, it's different for everybody, but for me, those are the ones that matter. And in that one, highly successful. In fact, the thing I'm most proud of in my company grenading, or me getting backstabbed out of my company, I got to be careful because I'm still under a bunch of legal shit for this. that if they watch stuff, I could get a letter one day, and if anything hurts the company, the lawyers all get their dogs out, right? So, but I want to be authentic about it, because if I was for a long time, it's only been 12 months. I wouldn't say anything about it. I'm just like, because I don't want to get sued, and I'm still a little like shell shocked, and I'm like, I don't know. That whole thing blindsided me so much and opened my eyes to how shitty people are and how much they will just do shit that is unbelievably gross. And so now everything up until the last like even few months, I don't even say shit because I'm just waiting for them. When they backstabbed me out of that company and deposed me, they had years worth of my Instagram pictures saved in a file with their own context typed out below it that they thought was, here's how we're going to paint this picture. And so now like it made me so gun shy to put anything online or do anything like that. But I don't do this because I want to hurt anybody there or anything like that. I don't. I want the company to be successful. I need to this has to be authentic when I talk, because otherwise I don't know. People can tell, and there's no point in the story.
Absolutely.
Right. And so authenticity, I think successful. Yes. I stood on that. That company almost killed me. I started it not knowing what I was doing. I thought I knew what I was doing, raising money and getting private equity or venture capital involved early. And that's what I'm going to do to help people now is their companies and their businesses. So all this stuff on authenticity, that company we can get into it whatever we want, but that company almost killed me. I was almost bankrupt a few times. All the other guys on my board had walked out. I raised the initial money from my family and friends and all $25,000 at a time. So in the first year, like every company, when it doesn't work and the whole market turns down on you and you're out of the first 2 million you raised and everything's bankrupt and everyone else just is like, well, that was a good try, and they all just leave. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, oh, idiot. And I had given so much equity to those guys, just given it. I didn't know about options. I didn't know about lockups. I didn't know about doing all that, because if they just leave 10 years down the road, they still hold millions of dollars worth of shares and have cashed out all along the way. Haven't been around for 8 years. I was locked up as a CEO through the whole thing. Not able to sell that stuff. Have to be the good CEO. First in, last out. Oh, you want to be the guy? You want all this glory and all this shit? And they kind of guilt you into it. They're like, you can't take any chips off the table yet because that will look bad for the other shareholders and all this shit. Meanwhile, these other guys are just liquidating everything. You haven't been here for a decade. It's crazy. So authenticity, standing on what you say you're going to do, integrity, all that shit. Yes. And it goes back to your question on the drilling rigs. Those guys are the hardest dudes on earth. And so success, money, all that shit, I'm going to have a typical answer for that. I was making way more than that 300 a year, plus my equity was in the tens of millions. And it just compounded my destination anxiety. I was more anxious and depressed about money at that 12 months ago when I was worth all that and making all that than I was when I was just trying to eat. That's the truth of it. So the money side of things, it's an interesting conversation around that. We can probably dive into that after, but yeah, the rig side of things and the authenticity and the integrity and all that shit, everything came from those drilling rigs. Cause
that's fair.
Yeah. Those guys are hard as hell. And they imagine a job where you go out there and when they first start, it's minus 50 degrees. This is like my first week, minus 50. Like you throw a pot of water in the air, nothing hits the ground. It just turns to smoke. I'm like, oh, well, obviously we can't work. And they're like, put your shit on. What do you mean? 12 hours? This thing doesn't stop. It works. No matter what, the rig goes. I'm like, okay. You're like, you can't even move. You're like SpongeBob because you have such thick coats on and sweaters, these big ass like Arctic mittens, and you're trying to screw drill pipe together or unscrew it. And you're pulling it out of the hole. And every time they take the top drive and back off that pipe above your head, it spits a bunch of drilling fluid and water out and soaks you. And I'm like, what is going on here? This isn't real life. No, why are we working? And they're like, they just don't even listen to you. They're just they just keep going around you. And I went and I tripped pipe for 10 hours, my first shift, and no breaks. They're just one 12-foot joint at a time. For 10 hours. And I'm like, when's lunch break? We stopped to circulate at 10 hours, went into the change room. I tried to go, this was my first mistake because you don't go inside after you go out. Once you get wet, it freezes and it protects you. Like the ice protects you from the wind and everything. if you go in and it melts, you're screwed because now the water goes through all your shit and then you can freeze to death. But I was going, I start eating my lunch. I'm like just trying to get something in me because I'm like shaky. And my push comes in and kicks my lunchbox out the door. He's like, what are you doing in here? I'm like, bro, I haven't eaten he's like, there's no fucking lunch break. Get out there. But they're testing, right? That was by design. That was like that. And it's like that for the first year. So
like, are you tough enough to actually be here?
Yeah. And that's where like, cause they went through it. And so now it's like the military or some shit.
Sure.
Right. It's like, they're just going to test you and they don't care and they're not going to break. They're not going to be like, hey bro, it's okay. Like someone comes behind the scenes like, it's okay, man. No, they just kick your shit out the door and they're like, goodbye, get out. And that was interesting. Yeah.
So for somebody that hates like higher authority, man, if somebody kicked my lunch, I'd be like, you fucking bastard.
Pretty much. And you try that and you have a reaction to that. And those guys will either meet your reaction or you're fired. Just go, just leave.
So you never had a reaction.
I mean, I think at that point I was just so flabbergasted. I was like, honestly, I was scared. I'm like, what am I doing out here? Because you got to remember, this isn't like you're at home and you get out of your bed and you go to work. I had gotten in a truck with a bunch of people I didn't know with my big, huge bags, driven 16 hours to the middle of the province there's nothing around. There's nowhere. It's like Siberia. You drove out through all these fields down this thing with people you don't know, and you're on this rig where you stay out there. And so you're just like, it's this crazy huge machine, super noisy, diesel running everywhere, just 5 guys out there minus 50 working, and they don't even say hi or talk to you. They just grab their shit. There's not a lot of orientation. There's no one like, hey, welcome to the job. They just like, get up there. And then you get up there and then the other guy starts telling you what to do. And it's like, what? Why am I doing all this? Or what? Like,
sure.
Anyway, so yeah, it's a little scary, honestly. You're just a little intimidated. You're like, okay, I guess fine.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So I guess, and I want to confirm something from earlier. 300,000 to me is the start to success.
Yeah.
Right. It's, to me, 300,000 is the new 100 grand, right? Where you can start to live slightly more. You can go on the vacations more that you want to. You can eat the food that you want.
Yeah.
But with that, you said it almost killed you. Define that. What does that mean to you?
One, this isn't for everybody. I did not adjust, or I did not maintain my lifestyle and let my earning go up. My lifestyle increased at the same pace as my earning. That classic trap everyone warns about, right? Like I spent as much as I made. Now I always was a guy who had a little money left all the time. I'm not a crazy saver. I'm not like that person who earns 100 grand and ends up being able to buy like 10 houses and all that. Like I was never taught about money. I was never educated on it. My parents don't have a lot of money. Like wasn't a thing. It's always a scarcity thing. So I'm more on the other side. I'm also not a guy who spends all his money and is constantly screwed no matter how much money he makes. I'm somewhere in the middle there. But going from 100 grand was great. You make 100 grand, then 200, and then 300, and then 400, and then 500 in a year, and 600. Not after like 150, 200, the pressure's gone. Like, you know, that anxiety about like, oh shit, I can't afford to stack enough to be good for 6 months. And just like that once that's gone, like you got a few hundred in the bank or whatever, and you're making that. Then after that, not much changes except for your want. Like I want a better SUV. I want a bigger house. I want a better vacation. I want to stay in the nicer hotel. It's all want. There's no need. And so I think like what's weird about that is life doesn't get better. And that's a crazy thing to say if you're focused on the money. Now, you're married. I was creating relationships. I was on a plane every week. Nothing was maintained. My personal life was a disaster, like all this shit. Worked 15-hour days for 10 years and just addicted to it because I was addicted to the validation. I was addicted to proving to someone I was angry. Like I had a crazy childhood too, dropped out in grade 12. Mom and dad are great now. We have a great relationship, but I got the shit beat out of me as a kid. It was very unsafe. And so it's like there's all these things where I was in scarcity mode and like reactive and like a bit skittish and not the best traits for a guy who then that usually drives a lot of ambition, right? It either ruins people or it makes them ambitious. It's like one of the two. But the problem with being ambitious with that background is I wasn't foundationally, didn't have anything built that I really wanted or needed. Didn't have good support, not a good wife, didn't have kids, didn't have all this. So it was like every time I'd get a little more sad or more anxious or more pressure would come on me, I'd fix it by working harder. I'd be like, oh, fuck, then I'm going to double down. And it becomes a pain thing after that. It's like, oh, shitty things happen in your life. Who gives a fuck? Watch this. I'll go harder, harder, harder. And to the point where I'm like sitting in this house in Houston, 10 years on with this company. It's like Iron Man house. It was all glass, 30-foot ceilings, huge. It has echoes in it, concrete floors, super modern, big pool in the backyard, brand new Escalade, Lamborghini, all the shit. And I didn't even want to drive them. I'm a car guy. I love that shit. I'm passionate about it. So it's not just about the money for those. I didn't want to drive it. It was just like, and when I'd go home to that house all the time, and I'd be like CEOing this company with 200 employees, and the company outpaced me in terms of personal development. So the CEO who would be hired right now to run $1 million company is completely different than the guy you'd look at or the girl for a $10 million company.
Sure.
And then again, not even in the ballpark of 100 million. Completely different people. You probably want more of a visionary, gritty, like go-getter down here that's really personable for $1 million. Up here at a $100 million, $200 million company, you probably want someone that's more disciplined, more detail-orientated, has experience in leadership, more emotionally regulated, like all these things. And that bell curve for that company scaling is within a timeline like that. And humans can only adapt so fast. Like,
sure.
Right. And so the company can easily outpace the human. And so at that point, I'm just like still not emotionally regulated enough. I'm in the company, not on the company. I haven't learned all the lessons, and I'm trying to hold this thing together. And I already have this anxious scarcity mindset around everything where I will fight it if it puts pressure on me. And so that's where I say, when I was like, almost killed me, I'd sit at that desk, literally nervous system was racked. My chest was tight all the time. I still have twitchy stuff sometimes where like if I get too stressed out, I can feel my body starting to twitch. I think it's like true like Nom style shit, like PTSD. And so at that point, that's why I have this like weird relationship with money now. I closed that front door of that house, and it was like the big glass house, like I said, with big heavy wood doors that are like 8-foot doors, and it would make this noise, and it was like, and it started to be this thing where I'd go home every night and I wouldn't see people all day. They went through the pandemic. I'd sit and do all this shit. And then I would close that door and I'd look at this big fucking house and I'd drop my bag, and I'm just like, and no laughing, no children running, no talking, no wife, no nothing. Just all this stuff. And it was the most depressing fucking thing every day. It was crazy. And so that's why this whole like thing, me getting deposed and yanked out of that company and super dramatic, I can say is a true gift. It's like, yeah, you have to give up tens of millions of dollars. Okay. Thank God that happened before I was 60.
I appreciate that insight. And I know all these guys listening, all these girls listening appreciate it too. Sometimes it's easy to have that destination of when I get to here, I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, I mean, sounds like you didn't have, necessarily the relationships and everything in order. You still got success.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people in this day and age that will give up the relationships for the success.
Yes. That was me. And I didn't even know I was doing it because, on one side I'm saying, here's the things that matter to me. I want to have kids really bad. I'm like, I love my family. I go out I'm that guy in the family that flies all over the place for people's birthdays and soccer games and all this shit, all my little cousins. And I just love that. Like, that's what fills me up. But I'm saying that out of one side of my mouth. And then all my actions are geared towards 12, 13 hour, 14 hour work days, more money, more scale, more this. And I'm wondering, I'm like, man, all these girls I date are crazy. Like, what is their problem? Like, they're ruining my fucking life. I already have enough stress, and here they are being crazy, ruining my life. And in reality, probably they're crazy because all they wanted was attention and time with me. And I'm not even realizing that I am completely doing the 1,000-yard stare 24/7, never present, always 6 months out. That's the catch about this stuff too. If you're going to be super ambitious and you need to plan ahead, especially as a CEO of a big company, you need to be thinking what could happen all the time. Problem with that is when you let that become your state of being and that's your personal life, you're never present, ever. And that destroys people, because I didn't even realize the impact that had on people. They're just trying to be with you and you're never there. You're physically there, but you're never emotionally there or like mentally there. You're out here.
Sure.
That's like the craziest disassociation ever that they are not aware of, because they're never that CEO and they can't figure out what the hell's going on, or maybe it's them, right? Like that you're like, you have a problem with them. And so they take that on and then you destroy them, make them crazy. And then all of a sudden there's just like almost like unintentional gaslighting where you're like, why are you so crazy? Like, I do everything to give this all to you for us, like whatever, like what's your problem? Can you just relax? Thinking that like buying the big fucking house and all this shit is what they really need or want, which is zero. Not. Right? Don't know. You don't learn that until you feel it. So that's why when you say, that's why I ask define success.
Once again, we talked about this earlier. I forget whether this was on the podcast or not. 43 years are young, right? I mean, too young, 25, 43. Thank goodness you figured it out now.
Yeah, I agree.
You're right. If you were 60, I mean, not that 60 you can still start over and be just fine, but way better to figure it out now than later.
I agree. I mean, I don't know what your perspective is on this, but even at 25, like you've got, I think it's a thing that, does this resonate with you at all? Being 25 and you get ambitious and you go through this stuff and you said you have these scarcity things that have shown up. You're married, right? But have you noticed any impact on that? Like trying to balance the ambition with the relationships and all this stuff?
Well, on a smaller scale, right? Because I'm what, 6, 7 years out of high school?
Yeah.
Like my things that I missed out on was there's a lot of shit that I want to do in high school that I never did.
Right.
Because I started in sales at 16. At 17, I started my first company. So it was immediately when I got the opportunity, I was an ambitious kid immediately. When I was 15, I immediately wanted to get into sales. The sales company couldn't hire me because I wasn't 16.
Right.
I was waiting to work hard. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I loved it, right? I built phenomenal relationships that I still have to this day. Grateful again that I learned it young. Yeah. Because even though high school is a small blip of time,
yeah,
it really is.
Yeah.
After high school, I carried those same ambitions forward to where it was affecting my entire relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no date nights, not doing the things that are crucial to success.
Yeah, presence.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about all the things like, oh, I had too much time. I was on a plane. I was doing, that's fine. Presence. Like, if you're good together most of the time, whichever way it's going, they are there to support. They want to help, or you want to help them, whichever way the dynamic is.
Exactly.
And they're there for it. Like they'll do it with you. But if you're not present when you're that period of time that you're supposed to be with them, that's at least for me, that was the nail in the coffin. That wrecked everything.
That's what, and I'm definitely grateful to be somebody that's genuinely willing to listen. Like if there's something that I'm doing that's hurting somebody, I want to know about it.
Yeah.
And I'll hear it. If I don't think that it's true, I'll stand my ground. Like I'm going to live in my true self also. But if I realize that I'm hurting somebody, I'm willing to transform immediately. I'll pivot.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to wait a week, a month.
Yeah.
No, if I'm doing something wrong, let's make the change now.
Yeah. Just bring
Yesterday.
it to my attention. Yeah.
Yeah. So when she brought it to my attention, the only thing is, hey, we'll allocate the time that I work hard. We'll allocate the time together. The only thing is never ask me to quit.
Yeah.
Like my dreams are my dreams, and I'm not willing to get rid of those for anybody.
Yeah.
Not myself, not my kids, not my wife.
You think that's
nobody?
True?
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's a part of my core values.
Yeah, I see that. I can tell you're very passionate about it. Like I see it's very real.
If I gave up what I desired most, it's just a part of my core values. I want to grow. I don't want to stay the same. I don't want a typical life, period. End of story.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because I'm just thinking of my experience. I'm doing my own projection right now, right? This is a discussion. This isn't what I think of you. I'm thinking through my lens now. It's like, because if you would ask me that, I would have had the same answer as you at your age. No, I have to balance it, but this is what I do. I'm going to be something. And then now I'm thinking the end of Cold War. If you'd ask me, will you give up Cold War for anyone in your life? I'm like, no. I spent 15 years building this. I'm too far. It's too big. There's too much of a prize at the end. Like I was waiting for the sale of that company, which is still going and still growing, but it was always next year. And I had 30 million worth of stock, 35 million worth of stock, plus performance warrants, plus all this other stuff sitting there. And I would quantify that all the time. And I'm like, there's no way. Like, who could walk away from that? Back to what? Starting over? No. Hard no. And then when you go through the thing of it getting yanked and you're fired from it and it's just over that morning, like the actual occurrence was I was living in Houston with all my stuff in that house, the trucks, all the shit, my life, bank accounts. I'd moved everything from Canada down. Because I was moving the whole company down there, some people didn't like it and they were going to have to get packaged out from Canada and they were waiting for the right time. I put a huge contract on the table with Exxon. That was the time. The company had crossed over into massive profitability. So when it happened, it was like 8:30 in the morning one day. I just get a phone call. I'm at an oil company. I get on the computer. They're like, here's all and everyone on there is like, what is going on? What is this? And we don't know. And one person is texting me, shut up. I know exactly what's happening. Keep your mouth shut. Don't talk. This is all going to be used against you. This is a coup. Don't talk. And I'm like, fuck. And I was like, okay, so it's just due process. But so cold. No one can talk. No one can defend. All my friends, people I've known for 10 years, guys I've been partnered, no one's talking. They're just sitting because they're afraid of getting wrapped up in this. And they're like, okay, so vote to terminate. And I'm like, terminate what? Like, vote to terminate. Vote. A couple abstain. A couple are like, yes, done. Brett, we'll send you the paperwork. Have your lawyers. That was it. Took the truck, shut the phone off, shut the computer off. Do not go back to the house. Don't touch anything in there. That's all Cold War property now. Don't call anyone. They advised the whole company, emails, all my assistants had been with me for 10 years. They're like my family. Don't talk to them. Don't do nothing. I'm just standing downtown Texas with backpack. No house, no cards, no nothing. And I was just like, what the fuck? I'm like, now what? Can I talk to you? I can't be like, everyone I know, my whole world. I'm like, what do I do? No, I don't know. I just get on a plane and flew back to Canada. I still had a house there, thank God. But I flew, just go to my house and I just sit there I'm like quietly sitting there that night and I'm like, I don't even know. It's like completely disassociated. I just went to bed and I was like, and so my point is like, when you say, I wouldn't give it up. Like I have to have that. When that happened, I don't have a choice. Now that's gone. That's done. So it just happened. And it's like, had I made different choices throughout all that and had a wife and kids and family and all this stuff, that wouldn't, in retrospect now, you go on a month or two and you let go of all the anger and you're like, fuck it, I'm going to go rebuild something. I don't need to do this. Thank God. Thank you. When you get there, you would give that up again in a heartbeat. If it was like, if you really, 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 if was a gun to her head, car accident's going to happen. I'll give you the power to see 10 minutes in the future. A car accident's going to happen. You have to give up everything you've ever done and start from scratch and she'll avoid the car crash.
Oh, then I would give it up.
Okay. So then it's not true.
That's true. That's fair.
Right?
I appreciate that insight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would give it up if it meant giving up what's most important. Myself, my relationships, definitely I would start over.
And that's like the only reason why I say shit like this. I don't mean to be dramatic, but it's like, I got to live that, which most people won't. So that if I ever could offer any value, it's always, people always ask like, oh, the money and how'd you get to 300 million and all this other shit. And it's like, I could tell, that's great because I want to help people get there. But if they're not foundationally square on a lot of stuff, then the only value I can provide that I think is actually worthwhile is some perspective like that, because the car crash is immediate and that's a dramatic like example. But the process of living the next 10 years, not being aware of that, is the same thing. If you're not paying attention, you will slowly have that same result of killing the things, not paying attention, skipping through it. Who cares if who cares if the significant others are here if you're not being present and making the most of it? If that's not your priority and you're not doing the things you love with them and enjoying life to the most with them, and that's the number one thing by far, and you're so stressed out and you're so busy that you're just coming and going to bed like a robot, then what's the point? You might as well get in a car crash, right? Because you'll promise me 10, 15 years later, you're gonna look back and be like, oh, fuck, bro, right? And when it gets taken away 10, 15 years later, that's the car crash. But it just happened 10 years after. You're like, dang. And so that's the gift for me now. I'm like, that's the thing with this now, is like, I'm focused on what matters, good relationships, good conversations. If I don't love what I'm doing every day, I don't do it. I'm not going to build a business for money. I really think through stuff. I go a lot slower, and it's going to be on family. I still want kids and family and all that. So, just try to, like, obviously I'm not the best at that. So that's where I have conversations like this that I love, because people are better at getting into relationships than me.
So obviously your life in a heartbeat just completely transformed. Mm-hmm. What, you said it took about a month to get back on your feet.
Yeah.
What was that process? Like, obviously that's night and day difference for life.
Yeah. I was sitting at first, I was like mad because it cost, there's my security for my life was going. I didn't know if they were trying to go after my equity too, like my current stock, which is millions. They're trying to take all of it. I don't know why. I'm like, why? It's not like I didn't been here and built all this, put my life on the line for this thing. Why are you trying to take, I don't understand the maliciousness there. I understand the greed and I understand people's shittiness, but I don't understand the maliciousness. And I was like, so I was really like, all right. I'm like, fine, let's go. I'm going to make sure that your kids don't have shoes ever. I'm going to take everything from you. You picked a fight with you saw the discipline it took and the grit that I had to stick in this company. You're going to regret it. And I was like, and then I remember sitting there and I'm like, that's so fucking gross. I'm like, that's not who I am. That's not, I could. It's like it's the shadow side. It's the 1% of me that I wanted to, like, in that moment, almost like embrace. I was like, let the 1% come out and I'm going to fucking end you. Everything. And I don't mean like get kind of your money and kind of your house, like everything. And then I'm not going to stop doing it. Because when I get my company back and I get the money, then I'm going to spend all the resources I have taking your next house from you. And I'm going to find out what company you start. And then I'm going to make sure that I start another company and take that one from you. And I'm going to arbitrarily sue you for something and end that company. I'm focused on destroying you for the rest of your life. And it was gross. And I felt terrible. And I sat in that for probably 2 weeks. I was making plans about the lawyers. I was talking to employment lawyers there. And the thing about it is they're just trying to do their job, but they're like hyping you up. Like, oh yeah, these guys screwed you. Like, we'll definitely win this. There's a lot of money on the line here. And they're like reinforcing that. And thank God that I talked to my life coach at the time. And he's like, hey, hold on. He's like, you're super angry. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. Who cares, bro? Just tell me how to win this. And he's like, no. He's like, get a piece of paper, split it down the middle. I want you to, on one side, I want you to write, why is this happening to me? And on the other side, I want you to write, why is this happening for me? And the to me side, I literally had all caps, like a little angry kid. It was all caps because they're trying to take my fucking money, my life. That's it. And my money is my life. And on the other side, I couldn't think of anything else. That was why it's happening to me. They're just trying to take my money. And on the other side, it was like, because I'm kind of over it, because my life, like, do I really give a shit? If my whole life force being poured into making some 70-year-old guy's oil well slightly more efficient in Texas, is that my purpose in this universe? No. How did I even end up doing this? Like, why am I doing this? Just because it's this chain reaction from 20 years ago. But this is my purpose as a human. Like, this is what I think the highest level of my creativity should be poured into. No. And I want a family. I want kids. I need a recalibration. I'm sick and tired of this. I'm isolated. I'm depressed. And it was like, and all these things are happening for me so that you can, it's going to be pretty scary and hard and you have to swallow a big pill here, but you get to go restart. And I was like, oh.
I'm firing you.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I feel like literally sitting there looking at that page, and I did that with my head. I was like, Are you man enough to accept this and to do it? And that was a question in my head. And I'm like, are you man enough? Because you're not the man if you go on the angry. You just proven to yourself. This is proof. I picked up the phone. I called the lawyer. I said, drop it. We're done. And she's like, what? I'm like, we're done. Leave it. That was it. Moving forward. Forgot about it. Put it out of my mind. And that was it. And I just took a year and I'm like, yeah, I'm not ready to go like figure out what I'm doing now. And so for the next 6 or 8 months, I literally just slept a lot. Nice, like good night sleeps, hung out with family, traveled around and just did nothing. And so then it was like 8 or 10 months before I started thinking like, okay, where am I now? It's like, not where am I going to restart it? What business am I going to do? It's like, where do I want to live? With what type of people, with what lifestyle to then start a new business somewhere. And that was Salt Lake.
Let's go. What was that inspiration for Salt Lake?
I know a lot of people here. I just had been coming here. I've had friends here for a long time. I had a pretty good network, and I want to be in the US, like I said, like 100% American born, just stuck in Canada.
What if Kamala won? Right decision?
Here's the thing. It's like, yes, would have still been, because the thing I identify with the most about being American is the fight. It's like, sure, it's not always going to go your way, but a good percentage of population down here is up for the fight.
Sure.
And a lot of people like villainize that over the last 10 years, especially with all the woke bullshit. They're like, oh, this like toxic, but like, fuck off. We're here to fight. And because this is my value system, I don't need you to tell me what's right or wrong on it. I don't need your acceptance either, or your validation. So I'm happy for you, however you live, but fuck off. That is not Canada, right? And so Kamala not winning down here, and sorry about the swears with the beep, 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 beep.
Journey to authenticity, baby. We
That's it.
We don't blur out anything.
And so, yeah, but that's the thing is like, America's where it's at. It's way better for business owners. It's way better tax-wise. It's way better to be able to buy real estate, and the banks will lend way more money down here, which is crazy. It'll probably be the downfall of the States, but the loose banking system, if you know how to use it, great. So yeah, it was just like I was coming down here anyway, and Salt Lake Mountains, because I grew up in like by Banff in Calgary. And so I was backcountry sledding all the time with my homies. And I'm like, there's mountains. It's in the States. I know a lot of people. I want a wife and kids. Utah people love kids. Everyone has 10 of them.
Truth.
Yeah. So I was like, shit, this good. Like, I mean, I'm not Mormon or anything, but I'm like, the more and more, and I used to be like very against religion because I just didn't love the organized aspect of it. But then now the more and more I like be around Mormon people, I'm like, foundationally, I don't agree with all this shit, but foundationally, like conservative, traditional, family values, all the shit, like foundationally, we all align. So it's like,
That's the truth.
yeah.
We agree on more things that we disagree with.
Yeah. Right. It's like now that the world has gone so far on like nitpicking at the surface level shit, like all the woke stuff, your identity, your race, your all this, like everything's a problem. It shifted my perspective to like, okay, well, I've been probably focusing on the wrong thing anyway, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to be around those people because of somehow they do what they do on Sunday. That's weird. But I'm like, well, hold on. Is that really like, who cares? That's just what they're doing on a Sunday. Like foundationally, what are these people about? Right. And I'm like, I'm about family, conservative values, helping other people, leave my stuff alone. Let me do it. Like Salt Lake. Perfect.
Amen. There's a new, I'm not LDS either. And that's just nowadays, they try to look for that one thing. We disagree here, so we can't be friends. No, let's talk about it.
Yeah. It's so important though, too. I think that's why religion, I'm starting to come around on, I always just looked at the bad side of religion, like the organized aspect of it, like the Catholics and the Christians, and like everyone had their turn crusading and crucifying people and like just murdering everyone. And every major war is this religious people against that religious people. It's like these tightly held beliefs that make you a fanatic against these tightly held beliefs that make you a fanatic. And anyone that was just like not really believing in nothing, I didn't see them starting a war. I'm like, so that's the way to be. I'm like just be agnostic or be whatever. And but I was like, now that I see the world shift in the last 10 years for sure, and all this pressure being like all this manipulative pressure being put on everybody, like to gaslight them and to separate them by color and to separate them by sex and to make bigger issue out of things that are smaller than they are, all this crap. it's so easy to get lost in that and to have like to feel very intensely about any one of those subjects and to get in fights about it or to like divide about it. But if you're focused on those, then that's just going to keep happening. If that's all you're thinking about because you're on that surface, where I see religion coming in now, and I'm not a religious guy, even I'm like, oh, when they need to pull large populations together, it has to be foundational. That foundational belief system is where they can relate, and it makes the surface stuff insignificant. If they believe so hard in these things at the base, then they're not fighting about that other shit, which bands them together, which makes them stronger, which then makes their tribe survive, which then makes them successful, right? And I was like, shit. So that's why, again, I'm like, in this crazy world, if I'm going to have kids and bring them up, I'm happy to be around where all the Mormons are, because they're like, we ain't having any of that shit here. These are our beliefs. They have been forever, and it's going to stay that way. And I'm like, great, I can get along with that.
Absolutely. 1,000%. The value system is great, and it's good to have it that you go to other states, and it's not to say that there's no other good states to raise kids around. There's definitely something different around the value system here.
Oh yeah. How do you guys navigate? Like if you're, what's your belief system now? So she's LDS and you're not.
So it's a long journey. I was in a place where I was like, I believe in God, and then, but what is that, you know? So I studied the 12 different major religions over this last year, and I started to learn about the Christian churches. All I can say is I'm right there with you. Seems like every major religion, there was some dude that had a vision, and then God said, this is the right way.
Sure.
I'm in this context of I'm figuring it out.
Yeah.
But I would say I believe in Jesus on a non-denominational way. There's not a church that I align with.
Is that spiritual then?
Spiritual. I believe in Jesus. So Christian, non-denominational. Figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I mean, hey, who knows? Like, do you believe in Jesus the concept or Jesus the actual dude?
Jesus the actual dude.
Okay, so no gold tablets, none of that. So this is where,
gold tablets.
And hey, I'm not, people get all emotional about this. I have no emotion about it. I just love having this conversation. It's not being demeaning or anything, but it's like when people, because I challenge this on myself too. I'm like, well, if I was going to pick a religion, first of all, why am I just picking a religion? Because to me, then like, I'm like, that doesn't align with what I'm feeling and what I know. If I'm part of the universe, I literally am. Like when I got more, definitely went down the road of like more introspection, more Nietzsche, more deep thought around how us, who is just a part of the universe, not like this idea of me, right? We grow up with like, I'm this and this is how I react with things, this is how I interact. It doesn't even exist. It's like this, I'm just part of, I am just energy that is connected to all the other energy, and it will then go away and reblend in when I die and all this shit. So it's just a cycle of energy. I'm a certain form of it right now that developed consciousness that's contemplating itself. And I'm like, so it seems trivial to try to pick which Jesus or which, I'm like, let me just skip past that. I'm good with everybody else if they're focused on whatever the thing is. And I just went to, how my consciousness contemplating itself. Like if I have an internal dialogue, this is Michael Singer stuff. If I am having an internal dialogue in my head right now, and I'm thinking something, we're just like walking around all day talking to ourselves. Who's listening?
Nobody but yourself.
No, someone's listening.
That's fair.
Because you have a thought and you're hearing that thought. So it's like there's a subject-object relationship even within our consciousness. And so it's like ask yourself a question right now. Anyone. You just answered it too. Right?
Yes.
Subject object. And I'm like, that's so fucking crazy. What am I missing here? And so like that to me, it's like, I have no problem. Like, that's great. If your interest and study is in the people or the stories, I find the best I can come to is like being a good, like I love storytelling. Those are stories because they need to get broad message across to a lot of people. And there's a million stories that are kind of the same thing, slightly different. And just because I'm born here, this happens to be my story. But if I was born in India, but still white, that would be my story. So I'm like, as far as like a scientific method goes, it's like, doesn't make any sense to me to really pour a lot into that. Cause like I can immediately disprove that that's probably the one just by where I was born. It doesn't line up like theoretically. Doesn't mean it's not true, But I'm just like, oh, well, okay, that's arbitrary. Let's get onto this consciousness thing. How am I connected to the higher power? Because for sure, this consciousness talking to itself bullshit and all these questions getting answered is like whatever's up there, whatever I'm part of, whether it's a simulation or it's who knows, there is something higher for sure. God, put that word on it. Great. That defines it.
Sure. That's fair.
I don't know if that's an even more dismissive, like avoidant perspective though, too. Like, what do you think?
You kind of just blew my mind. Honestly, I've never really thought of that, of something is always listening. Like, obviously the thought was there, but it was never put into perspective that you ask it. You can ask a question. You already know the answer. You don't even need to ask the question.
Correct.
So just by asking a question, you'll just immediately answer.
You're talking to, like, something's listening.
It's a two-way street. It's a conversation always being had.
Have you ever read Michael Singer's books? Okay, I'd highly recommend. He goes into that a lot. This is where I learned all that, and that blew my mind. I was like, wait, what's he talking about? This is just me. It's like, no, there's not me. There's a subject-object relationship here where you're asking a question and something is answering it. Something's listening. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm not me. I'm not just me. Or is me just a concept that I'm like, it's some abstract concept that I'm not clear on. And then it was like this individualism of like, I'm so important, almost like this ego-based presumption that like, I'm this really important human, that I'm like one of this one unique thing that only existed. It's like, no, you're not. You're just particles and energy. That's the same thing as everything else in here. You're stardust, just like everything else was. It just happened this tiny sliver of time. You're in this form that somehow developed consciousness. And now, so for me, the ultimate study is like that consciousness. Is it given, or is it inherent, or is it involved? Or is it evolved? And I'm like, because every one of those has really big implications on how I'm thinking about my existence. And then, is it even important if I realize if Jesus or someone else had gold tablets or Buddha has 8 arms? Like, is that really where I should be spending my time thinking? And it might be. It's not better or worse than anything, but for me, definitely, I'm like trying to read everything I can on consciousness.
I love that. And I think the only thing that I would call out for anybody is I'm not so caught up on what people believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm caught up on believe in something.
Yeah.
Statistically speaking, you'll be a better person. You'll have better relationships. You'll have more success financially. You'll have more success in your career. Across the board, if you believe in something higher than yourself, you increase your chances dramatically of having a higher successful life.
Why do you think that is?
You're living for something greater than yourself.
Yes. It's the lack of ego. It's service. I didn't realize that for a long time either. I didn't understand how belief could possibly help you. I'm like, why do you need belief? Just have ambition. Just believe in yourself. And ambition it goes back to that like crazy scarcity ambition that I had. We'll see what happens with the next chapter and the speed of doing this and if I can maintain my new perspective. But it's like, if my goal for Cold War was like, I literally wrote out my why was like, I want to make $1 billion company. That was the why. No wonder you're so fucking depressed after like 10 years. Numbers are just a number that never ends. So it's like, when I get 100 grand a month, or when I make 10 grand a month, when I make 20 grand a month, then I'll be good. When I make 30, okay, then that's actually better. 50, I'll be really comfortable. When I make 100 grand a month, that's actually, then I'm kind of getting there. But then when you make that 100, you're like, well, 250, because the guys I now associate with make 500. So, you know what I mean? And there's this destination anxiety that develops where you are as anxious about getting to 500 as you were about eating. And so numbers, like when someone pointed this out to me, they're like, this destination anxiety is literally just the never ending effect of a number, like in infinity. This is your anxiety will follow that number if that's what you're focused on, right? And so my why, if it's going to be a number, good luck. There's no finish line. So you're just like, what are you running towards? What do you like? So belief, if you just have belief, to me, that's much more like less ego-centered. It's like, I believe in something greater than me, and so I'm going to try to serve, right? This whole service-based mindset. And I think in business, if you have a service-based mindset, like how much value can I provide everywhere else? You're not focused on a number. You're not going to have anxiety on getting to that number because that's not your focus. It's like, did I provide that value to that person? Are they better off? Yes is the answer. Finished. Good. I accomplished it. I feel good.
Absolutely.
And inevitably, if you're pumping value into an ecosystem, it's going to come back like way more.
Well said. So I have one more question, then we'll end with a couple quick hit questions.
Yeah.
The last question that I'm curious about is, now that you've transformed all of this, and transforming, I should say, you're still working on it.
Still a train wreck, but yeah.
Hey, that's life, right? It's ever evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about consciousness. The last thing that I'll throw out here is, the truth is, we will never become the best version of ourselves. Yeah. We will never accomplish everything that we're capable of accomplishing, because we all have an end of our story.
Yep.
You can always learn more. You can always accomplish more. But when the end is here, it's done. You could have learned more, but you didn't.
Yeah.
So there's also, enjoy the journey, but also live fast.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Go become your best self. Go accomplish success, but realize that you're always going to be moving in the right direction, as long as you choose.
That's good insight, man. I mean, especially at 25, like I think it's just gratitude you're talking about. Most powerful thing ever, gratitude. Because if you have gratitude, then it allows you to be present. Because if you don't, you can't be scared and you can't experience fear and joy at the same time, right? It has to be one or the other. And so it's either scarcity or gratitude. And so if you're in scarcity, you're constantly trying to get more. If you're in gratitude, you're good. Trying to get more tends to make you look to the future. If you're good, you can just settle in the present, right? So there's all these things around gratitude that if that's the one thing you focus on. And I was always, when I was your age, I was like, okay, great. Thanks for that hippy dippy shit. I'm back to getting $1 billion. Talk to you later.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but what is your definition of success now, man?
Happiness in the present. That's it. If I'm happy every day. And that sounds cliche, but it truly is. If I can just wake up every day and just enjoy it, then all the whatever money I get or whatever business I build or however people that I don't know or care about see me, however my family perceives me, if I'm happy, I'm probably a good person. I'm probably in service. I'm probably in gratitude, like all these things. That's all that matters. Like that's success.
So no cars, no money, nothing anymore. It's just,
bro, I love cars still. Like I still want to, I'm buy a GT3 RS. Hell yeah, that's sick. But that's after I'm already living this stuff. And if it never comes, that's fine. It used to be though that I needed to get that GT3 RS to show people I was something and successful and all these things. And so that was it. Like just to show someone something. Now, like you can still enjoy all that. Now, I truly think this next 5-10 years of my life, I'll earn more than Cold War ever want to make. But it doesn't matter if it does. Who cares? As long as I'm happy. Like to be happy. And and that's like, I don't know how you could argue. I just feel this and it may be hard to explain, but it's like now that when you live it and you come to that realization, you're like, how could success be anything else? Just being happy every day. And if you're happy, then who cares? If you go broke and you're happy, okay, that can happen. I know happy broke people. I'd rather be that than a fucking miserable billionaire.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't think that's true, but go for it. You got to live. Go make $100 million and be fucking miserable and have no one around, have your kids leave you. And then, or run the scenario in your head. I run the dramatic scenarios and maybe it's a little off-putting to some people, but it's like,
it's important. People don't want to look at the truth. Look at the truth and then you'll know.
Right. That's what I want these things to shock me a little bit, to jar me. Like, think about her getting in a car accident tomorrow. It'll make you sit down and have dinner tonight. It'll make you think through, I need to edit for 18 hours after we did 5 hours. Like, fuck that. Let's go walk the dogs. I just want to hang out with you. Right. So I think you got a good balance of success here right now. So I'd say try to maintain this. No matter what level of like money or monetary reward comes your way, just try to maintain this energy that you have. Yeah.
I love it. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah.
That in mind, what is your definition of an authentic life?
I'm careful now on podcasts not to say, that's a good question.
Fucking
hate that. People don't have an answer.
Just to break the silence.
Yeah. Good question. So annoying. An authentic life. I don't know how you define authenticity. How would you define authenticity? How do you define it? I can't believe I'm stumped on that.
It's pretty. I'll give you my definition.
Okay.
It's simply choosing to be the best you right now. The podcast is Journey to Authenticity because
what if authentically you're not the best you today? You're kind of a shittier version of you. Here's a maybe thing that catches in my, but this is where I was getting caught up. Going through all this shit with me, I've had a lot of other crazy shit. A sibling die, kids I've lost that were unborn, all this crazy shit. That was as hard as the rest of the company stuff. And there were days where it was just not good me. And but I was running this big company and I was on meetings every day and Zoom calls and all this shit. And I couldn't let my employees see that. And so the problem was it was very inauthentic for me to be excited that day and to be like full of energy and a leader. I did not want to be a leader. I wanted to cry and curl up and give up and all this shit. And I couldn't be authentic because authentic me would make everybody else panic. They'd be like, oh, we're fucked. He's lost it. And so your definition there is like, I respect where that's coming from, but I'm like, I don't know if choosing to be the best you, because I was choosing to be the best me by definition, was not authentic. I needed to just not beat the shit out of myself and just be shitty that day.
So can I challenge that?
Yes, please.
So what if crying once in a while was actually okay?
That is okay. That is good. It's that the darker side of me, like I'm just going to be not nice to people today, or I'm going to I don't want to show up. Like, don't fucking talk to me. Don't ask me for shit today. I just need to be in this room and be okay with not providing for anyone today. Like, I'm not here for you. I'm not, like, it got to that. And now I was probably more alone and more in darker places than a lot of people. And so it was like at a pretty desperate point a lot of times.
So here's what I'll say to that.
Yeah.
This is my viewpoint. I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer here.
Love these conversations.
If you were my boss and you said, hey, Braiden, I appreciate you coming to me, but I just lost I was building, this in my house for my kid and we just lost my kid.
Yeah.
I really can't be here for you right now.
Yeah.
Can you go find somebody else?
Yeah.
I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I would have the utmost respect for you for me saying that.
Hey, one-on-one, I think I agree. Issue is when you got 250 employees and you're with investors and board members and all this shit.
That's fair.
Then how do you have that conversation? There might be a way. I'm not saying it's impossible.
Sure.
I'm trying to explore this authenticity question, because like, what's your definition of authenticity? It's like, maybe I'm coming to, maybe my answer is that I'd be willing to accept any outcome. If I can live in authenticity, it's that I'm willing to accept any outcome in any situation. If the company's going to fire me, or if I'm going to lose it because I need to show up depressed today and I can't be here and I'm not going to talk about it, and that would be better for me and my family so I can recover. Well, we can't have you doing that because that's bad public perception. We're going to have to remove you as CEO. Okay. I'm not attached to that outcome.
And here's what I'll also say too. I love that. Choice is in also authenticity. Not everybody deserves the full you.
Yes.
You don't have to go spill your story to everybody else.
No.
So as far as I'm concerned, it sounds like you didn't necessarily feel safe in front of 250 people and say, look at my life. And quite frankly, I think that's okay. You were choosing to show up in a way that you felt was best for yourself and others.
Well, but it wasn't authentic. That's what was killing me, is because I just wanted to scream and I just wanted to be like, guys, I don't got this anymore. Like, I need fucking help. And I can't take this anymore. Stop putting fucking pressure on me to do it. Like, stop. You're just on the outside looking in. You have no idea. You've never ran this. I respect that you do this thing. You're a board member. Just stop. You stop. You guys figure out your own shit. You're fucking adults. That would have been authentic.
Sure.
but you just can't, you know what I mean? Like, and so, but it was because I was so attached to, I'm just trying to figure out why I needed the outcome of that company to sell, because I was in scarcity, that I needed that money
Sure.
to live, to have, like, there's all this chain of inauthentic shit that I was believing to get there to where I couldn't just do that. And so it was my choice to be in a company where I couldn't be authentic. I'd constructed it, right? But it was all attachment to outcome. And so now if I'm unattached to outcome completely, then I can truly just do what I think I want to be, or be the way I want to be that day. That might, I don't know, it's kind of scary, because like, that's a lot less structured. That's a lot less like certain.
That's fair. So I'm not trying to twist it, but what I heard there too is you left the place that you were authentic, and now you're choosing to live each day fulfilled, happy. And if you don't like doing something, you just don't do it.
Trying, yeah, for sure.
So I guess that's why I break it down to choice, because the truth is it's similar to the consciousness.
Yeah.
In reality, every moment we know what is truly best for ourselves and others. We can ask the question, what if all worked out for me in this moment? What exactly would I do?
Mm-hmm.
You know what's best for you. And that's where I break it down to choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your definition? What'd you say again? Something.
Just choosing to be the best version of you right now. That doesn't mean you know everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Might
cool.
change
I'd cool be a billionaire and be happy and have the kids and all that stuff, right? Let's be real.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
Yeah.
I can act in accordance to get the result that I desire.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm acting out of accordance, that means that I'm not going to get the result.
Yeah, that's right. So bravery of choice. I think bravery of choice is a precondition, and then as long as you start with that and you don't pigeonhole yourself. So I guess I'm working backwards from where I had built myself into, and my mind is sitting in that context. So in that context, then I just have to let go of outcome, and then I can get there. Then you have freedom of choice.
Yeah. I love it.
So yeah, because they kind of blend together. I had to get myself out of that box to get back to being able to have freedom of choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it, man. With that in mind, what can I and my audience be doing for you?
That's it. Nothing. Everyone this was awesome. I love having this conversation. Thanks. I pulled up, I'm like, honestly, I got out. I'm like, all right, someone's house in like this random neighborhood. I was like, I don't think I'm in the right spot.
It's not even a neighborhood.
But it's, bro, being here is like, I love authentic interactions, and I appreciate you being authentic. This was a good use of my time. So thank you. And I don't know you at all before coming here. And I'm like in this random house, and I'm like, fuck, what am I doing agreeing to this shit all the time? I want to be there for people that seem cool and seem nice. And I'm like, I'm glad I did. So
I appreciate that, man. With that, I'm going to shout you out. You have some exciting stuff going on. Obviously, you're building exciting businesses, a life. Go follow him on Instagram. We'll tag all your stuff below. So
cool.
Be sure to go shout him out.
I will. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening to the Journey to Authenticity podcast today. If you liked what both myself and Brett had to say, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. This interests me to get the most highly qualified, most interesting guests to come help you transform your life. Also, while I have you here, if you're ready to take your transformation to the next level, really dive deep, redefine what success means to you, and you want support with that so that you can become the best version of yourself, show for your relationships, and go build the life that you desire, either go to braidenbelnap.com or the link below so I can help you in your one-on-one coaching to help you transform your life. Have a good one, everybody.